My name is Jessa Marlowe, 23 years old. Dinner was chicken gone cold and a family treaty already breaking. Mom set down her fork like a gavel and asked, in the same voice she used for church volunteers and collection plates, "So, are you ready to marry your Uncle Freddy?" Dad didn't laugh. He just tightened his grip on the knife until it squeaked against the plate. Aunt Beatrice, best friend to my mother, architect of our reputations, smiled with all her teeth and none of her warmth. "He's not my uncle," I said, and then the part of me that had been swallowing fire for 5 years finally exhaled. "And if this is a sale, you picked the wrong merchandise." The table went silent in the way that hurts your ears. Dad dropped his fork. Somewhere the furnace clicked on and made the house sound like it was breathing too fast. "Don't be dramatic," Mom said. "Freddie is a good man. He'll take care of you." "Like he took care of wives 1 and 2, I said. "Like he took care of my phone with messages I didn't ask for?" Aunt Beatrice's lemons of a face puckered. "You're confused. Freddie has been nothing but generous. Generous enough to send photos I never wanted. Generous enough to corner me at Christmas by the coat closet." I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd been too ashamed to show anyone, and slid it across the table. "Read." Mom's color drained. Dad stared, like the screen might spit. Aunt Beatrice didn't touch it. She looked at me as if I'd tracked mud across her white carpet. Dad found his voice first. "We have sacrificed everything for you. The business, the house. You refinanced the house 3 times because you and Mom won't stop playing roulette with bills," I said softly. "You want my ring finger to be a bailout." Mom's mouth shook. "You think we enjoy this? We are drowning. Freddie is offering a hand. He's throwing an anchor." My phone vibrated against the table, an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but sometimes the universe clears its throat at exactly the worst moment. "This is Detective Novak," a calm voice said when I answered. "Financial crimes. We're moving on Mr. Morrison tonight. I wanted you to know, also, Ms. Marlowe, your parents' names keep appearing in his accounts. I thought you should be prepared." My stomach didn't drop so much as hollow out. "How deep?" A pause that said, "Deep enough. We'll be executing warrants shortly." I looked at Mom, at Dad, at Aunt Beatrice, who had started smoothing her napkin like she could iron the future flat. "You should probably call a lawyer," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Before the silence could congeal, another call. Devin. Relief rose and then evaporated at his tone. Professional, distant. "We need to talk. My boss assigned me to the Morrison case. I've been ordered to question you formally tomorrow. If you knew anything about your parents' involvement and didn't report it," he swallowed. "I can't see you, Jessa. It's a conflict." I stared at the wall like it might open into a better version of my life. "Got it." He was saying something else. Sorry, I think, but the words tangled in the noise of my family arguing again. I hung up before I cried in front of them. Headlights bled across the curtains. Sirens, low and patient, came to a stop outside. Through the window, blue and red washed over our china cabinet like someone was developing film. Dad stood, then sat. Mom whispered, "No, no, no," like a prayer you use when the old ones don't work. I grabbed my jacket. On my windshield, under the wiper blade, was an envelope. No name, just my day, suddenly in someone else's handwriting. Inside, a photo of me and Davin, taken from across the street, with the kind of lens used by people who don't want to be seen. He was kissing my forehead, the way he always did before his morning run. I was in his Northwestern Law sweatshirt. On the back, in the slanted swagger I knew too well, "I know everything about your little boyfriend. Let's make a deal, a phone number." The house door opened behind me. Aunt Beatrice's perfume reached me before her voice. "You're being emotional. This will all be fixed if you stop fighting what's best." "What's best for who?" I asked without turning. "For all of us," she said, with the soften or else cadence she'd used my whole life. "Your mother is fragile. Your father is proud. Freddie can bring us back to good standing." Standing where? In his shadow? Inside, my phone chimed with an email. Subject line, TikTok. I shouldn't have opened it in the driveway like that, but I did, because you always want to see the exact shape of the thing trying to ruin you. 57 photos, me and Davin at the farmer's market, in his car, through his bedroom window, a smear of curtain hiding nothing. The attachment at the bottom was labeled insurancepolicy.pdf. I told myself not to. My finger tapped anyway. It was a marriage contract between me and Freddie, dated 3 months ago, filed with the county clerk, stamped like it had been born legitimate. My signature curved across the last page with the same loop on the J I'd had since middle school. I didn't sign this, my brain said. You did, the document lied. The sound I made was small and ugly. Aunt Beatrice leaned in to look. I stepped back. You should stop now, she murmured, as if I were making a scene at her garden party. Accept the security. We can fix the rest. What is the rest? I asked. The part where you sell me to a man twice my age so you can keep your bridge club and Dad can keep pretending he isn't broke? Her eyes hardened, something reptile sliding under the socialite. Sacrifice is part of family. I agree, I said, just not mine. Police doors thumped, boots on our porch. In the kitchen window, I saw Mom press her hands together like she might hold her heart in. Dad straightened his shoulders for a fight he couldn't win. My phone rang again. A different number. I almost let it die. Then I answered because sometimes hope is a bad habit. We need to talk, Davin said. The blonde you saw with me. She's my cousin, Vanessa. She's helping victims in the case. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't sure how deep your parents were. Jessa, I didn't betray you. I closed my eyes. I can't do this right now. I'll wait, he said, but it sounded like a promise trying to stand in a hurricane. Behind me, Freddy's Range Rover slid to a stop like a threat. He got out smiling a smile that had never reached anyone's eyes. As the officers closed in with papers, he glanced at me, just long enough to let me know he'd already circled the next move on his calendar. I got in my car and drove with no destination, just away. The phone pulsed with missed calls. Mom, Dad, Beatrice, unknown numbers, multiplying like mold. I pulled into a bad-lit diner off 94 and ordered coffee I couldn't drink. The waitress looked at my hands shaking and pretended not to notice. She kept refilling the cup anyway, which felt like mercy. At 2:03 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I didn't recognize. The photos get worse. Check your email. The attachment was the same contract, now with a note. Already filed, sweetheart. Married 6 weeks. Your lawyer boy slept with a married woman. Wonder how the bar will feel about that. Somewhere inside me, a switch flipped from fear to something steadier. I took out a napkin and a pen from the sugar caddy. I wrote down the number on the envelope. I wrote down the dates from the email. I wrote down a memory. New Year's Eve, Freddy on his 6th scotch, bragging about a property in the Caymans, and a charity that washed construction money until it came out clean. He'd written an account number on a cocktail napkin then, too. I'd kept it without knowing why. The waitress set another coffee down and patted the table like it might comfort me. Whatever's on that phone, she said softly, it doesn't get to tell you who you are. Maybe not, I said, but it just told me what I have to do. Outside, a semi roared past, shaking the windows. I looked at my reflection in the glass, eyes red, jaw set, and didn't recognize the girl who kept making herself smaller to fit other people's plans. I opened my laptop. By sunrise, the diner was empty, except for me, the waitress, and a radio, whispering bad country songs about second chances. I had no second chance, just an hour-by-hour survival plan scratched onto napkins, coffee rings bleeding the ink like bruises. The first rule, don't go home. The second, don't go anywhere Freddy might expect. The third, don't stop collecting evidence. I paid in cash, stepped into the chill of early morning, and felt eyes on me even before I reached my car. A black sedan idled at the far end of the lot, engine humming like a growl. I didn't look long enough to confirm who was inside. I just drove, fast, aimless, until the highway turned into streets lined with warehouses and the world went gray. When my phone finally rang, I already knew whose voice would be on the other end. You look exhausted, Freddy said, casual, like we were still family. You shouldn't drive when you're upset. Bad things happen on the road. How did you get this number? I've always had it, sweetheart. His tone was almost affectionate. I wanted to check in before court this morning. You've got quite the imagination. Fake emails, fake signatures. The county clerk was very impressed with your creativity. You forged that contract, I said, gripping the steering wheel. And the photos. A pause. Deliberate. You're young. You don't understand how the world works. Perception is reality. The world sees a signature. They believe it. The world sees photos. They believe them. Truth is what survives scrutiny. And you're all out of power to make anyone listen. My stomach twisted. You won't win. He laughed, soft and patient, like a teacher correcting a student. Jessa, I've already won. I always win. Your parents are my leverage, and you? You're the ribbon on the package. Then his tone darkened. Be at the courthouse by noon. Smile for the cameras. We'll make it official. Or... He trailed off. I could hear papers rustling, the sound of his rings tapping the phone. Your parents' arraignment is scheduled for the same time. $500,000 bail each. Without me, they'll sit there until sentencing. With me, they'll be home by dinner. I can fix everything. You just have to stop fighting. You set them up, I said. He ignored it. Oh, and Davin, he added, almost kindly. You'll be glad to know he's already found comfort in someone else. That cousin of his, Vanessa? They looked cozy outside his office this morning. I'll text you the photo. A ping followed. I shouldn't have looked. I did. Davin and Vanessa holding hands, her head tilted toward him, a golden morning light that made the betrayal look cinematic. See, Freddy said. Men like him don't pick fighters. They pick ornaments. Now open your door. Let's talk like adults. I froze. Through the side mirror, I saw him walking toward my car, the same too-perfect smile slicing across his face. He'd been in the black sedan the whole time. I hit the gas before he reached the handle. Tires screamed. He yelled something I couldn't hear over the engine. By the time I merged onto the interstate, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I kept replaying his words. I can fix everything. You just have to stop fighting. He didn't want peace. He wanted obedience. And obedience was death. I stopped at a gas station 2 towns over, locked myself in the restroom, and stared at my reflection under the sick fluorescent light. My face looked older, harder. Fine, I whispered. You want to fight? You'll get one. I opened my laptop on the toilet lid, balancing it on a roll of paper towels, and began typing everything I remembered from the past 5 years, every weird coincidence, every failed scholarship, every job rejection that came minutes after I'd listed my reference contacts. The pattern formed like a slow infection across the screen. Freddy hadn't just hunted me recently, he'd been preparing me. Every closed door, every setback, every move that pushed me closer to dependence. It was all him. He'd used his connections, his money, even my parents' desperation, to engineer a cage that looked like a safety net. I scrolled through my old photos. Christmas 2019. Freddy drunk, waving his glass, bragging about how international investments were the key to real wealth. He'd mentioned the Caymans. I'd laughed, thinking it was just another boast. Now I remembered the numbers he scribbled on a cocktail napkin. I still had it, folded in an old journal, stuck between pages. I typed faster, connecting dates to deposits, charities to shell companies. My years of design work came in handy. I made charts, timelines, flow diagrams. By dawn, I had a dossier fit for a federal agent. Then I sent it to Detective Novak, to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, to the IRS, and to 3 journalists who specialized in corporate corruption. The subject line was simple: you arrested the wrong man first. I didn't expect a reply. I got one 10 minutes later. Novak's voice on the phone was breathless. Where did you get this? From Freddy. He talks too much when he's drunk. If even half of this is real, we're looking at international money laundering, tax evasion, maybe racketeering. Why didn't you come to us sooner? Because I was afraid, I said, and because he's been watching me since I was 18. He paused. All right, bring everything to my office. And listen, Ms. Marlowe, don't go home. Don't go near your parents, and whatever you do, don't let him see you. I checked into a cheap motel near the state line, paid cash, and pulled the curtains shut. My nerves were raw, my mind buzzing. I expected silence. What I got instead was my phone ringing again. Unknown number. I knew it would be him. You stupid little girl, Freddy hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I'm learning fast, I said. The feds just raided my office, he spat. You think you can outplay me? I made you. Every inch of your life exists because I allowed it. Then you shouldn't have taught me how to plan, I said. You shouldn't have left trails. You ruined your parents. You ruined your boyfriend. I'll ruin you. I'll make you wish you were never born. I let him rant until his words tangled, then cut him off with calm I didn't feel. Check your Cayman account under Meridian Holdings, I said. That $3.2 million you wired last week, it's frozen. Enjoy explaining that to your lawyers. Silence. Then finally, how did you... You told me, I said. New Year's Eve. 6 scotches in. Remember the napkin? His breathing turned heavy. By the way, I continued, the marriage contract? Already confirmed as forged. FBI is analyzing the signature. That's another felony, so maybe you should save your breath for your arraignment. He exhaled a sound between a growl and a laugh. You think this ends with court? You think you're safe? You're nothing without me. No, I said quietly. I'm nothing because of you. But that ends tonight. I hung up. The silence that followed felt like the first real oxygen I'd breathed in months. Then I packed everything I had, laptop, evidence drive, the napkin, and walked out into the bright, merciless morning, headed straight for Novak's office. Detective Novak's office looked nothing like the kind of room where lives changed. No movie lighting, no drama, just gray walls, stacks of case files, and a burnt coffee smell that had given up years ago. But the table between us was covered with everything that mattered. My laptop, the folders of screenshots, Grandpa's napkin of numbers, the printouts of Freddy's fake charities. 2 FBI agents leaned over the evidence like they were looking at a live bomb. Novak stood behind them, arms crossed, his calm the only thing holding me together. This is incredible, said the younger agent, a woman with her hair scraped back so tight it looked painful. If this holds, we've got 50 shell companies, at least 5 accounts overseas, and multiple falsified charitable donations. Add the forgeries, Novak said quietly, nodding to the marriage certificate I'd brought, and the stalking. They didn't have to say the word victim. It was written all over the silence that followed. I forced my voice not to shake. He's still out there. He called me this morning. The older agent looked up. We're freezing his assets as we speak. He'll panic, and that's good. Panic makes people sloppy. Sloppy. That was what I was counting on. Freddy's arrogance had always been his blind spot. He believed no one was smarter, no one could challenge him. He'd built an empire on other people's silence. But silence, I'd learned, was a kind of currency too, and I was done paying. By the end of the day, Novak's team had everything they needed for new warrants. I gave a full statement, then another one, each version smoother than the last, like sanding a rough edge. I answered questions about the contract, the photos, the emails. I didn't cry, not once. When I finally stepped out of the precinct that evening, the city was drowning in orange light. I expected relief. What I felt was hollow, the kind of hollow that comes after months of being clenched so tight you forget what breathing feels like. Devin was waiting across the street. For a second, I thought about running. Part of me was still tangled in the photograph Freddy had sent, the one that showed Davin with Vanessa, hand in hand, sunlight turning them into strangers. But when Davin saw me, his expression wasn't guilt. It was exhaustion and something else, hope, fragile and careful. Jessa, he said softly. I stopped in the crosswalk, still unsure which version of reality to believe. The woman in the photo, I said, each word slow. Vanessa. My cousin, he said immediately. My cousin. She's been helping me build a case file on Freddy for weeks. She works with victims of fraud, advocacy law. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't sure how deep your parents were in. I didn't want to hurt you. The sound that came out of me wasn't quite a laugh. You thought I was one of them. I thought you might be a target, he said. I was trying to protect you. I wanted to stay angry. I really did. But the way he looked at me, like someone watching a window open after years of darkness, took the edge off. Vanessa's the reason you have this, he said, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a manila envelope. Restraining order, filed this morning. Freddy can't come within 500 feet. I took it, staring at the black ink seal like it was a relic from another world. How did you... Vanessa, he said again, smiling faintly. She's relentless, like someone else I know. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. You shouldn't be here, Davin. Freddy's not going to take this quietly. I don't care, he said. You're not alone anymore. It should have been comforting. It was terrifying, because I knew Freddy wouldn't stop until he'd rewritten the narrative, until the victim became the liar, and the monster became the martyr. 2 days later, my face was on every screen. Headlines. Wealthy consultants jilted ex-Forge's contract in elaborate scheme. Freddy's legal team moved fast, spinning a story so polished it gleamed. Fake screenshots, fabricated texts where I begged him to marry me, professed my love, threatened to ruin him when he refused. They painted me as an unstable girl obsessed with a man who kindly tried to help her family. The internet split in half. Half believed me. The other half called me manipulative, greedy, dangerous. Vanessa handled the fallout like a war strategist. She drafted a statement for me. Calm, measured, lawyer-proof. I was a whistleblower. I was brave. I was cooperating fully with law enforcement. The truth sounded sterile on paper, but it was armor. Detective Novak called every night, updates clipped and matter of fact. We have the real data, metadata, timestamps, cloud recoveries. Don't let the noise get to you. Court will make it right. But court felt like a lifetime away. The noise was immediate. Paparazzi outside my building. Strangers messaging me everything from marriage proposals to death threats. Someone even left a brick through Davin's window with a note scrawled in marker. Lying slut. Rotten hell. We filed another report, another restraining order, more paperwork to prove I deserve protection. One night, I asked Vanessa why she cared so much. We were sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by coffee cups and files. She rolled up her sleeve and showed me a faint scar near her wrist. Because 7 years ago, my ex-husband tried to kill me, she said quietly. And when I pressed charges, his family destroyed me. Said I was unstable. Said I hurt myself. I survived, but the case didn't. You have proof, Jessa. You have a chance to end it. The next morning, Novak called again. We got him. Freddy had shown up at a restaurant where I was eating with Davin, pacing outside the window, pretending it was coincidence. It wasn't. He'd broken the restraining order. The judge revoked his bail. When Novak told me, I sat down on the edge of my bed, dizzy. So it's over? For now, he said, but trials are slow. You need to stay alert. The relief didn't come right away. It trickled in hours later while I was washing dishes in Davin's apartment, listening to him hum under his breath. The ordinary sounds of a life I'd almost forgotten how to have. Outside, the world still hated or loved me, depending on which headline they'd read. Inside, the water ran warm over my hands, and for the first time since this began, I felt something close to peace. But peace never lasted long around Freddy. 2 weeks later, a subpoena arrived in my mailbox. My name bold at the top. The trial date was set, and I was the star witness. The subpoena sat on my kitchen table like a live grenade. I must have read my name 20 times before it actually felt real. The People versus Frederick Morrison, primary witness, Jessa Marlowe. Davin poured coffee and set a mug beside me. You knew this was coming. Knowing doesn't make it less terrifying, I said. My voice cracked halfway through. He touched my hand carefully, the way someone might handle a fractured bone. You're ready. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. By the time the trial began, the world had already chosen its sides. News vans circled the courthouse every morning, reporters shouting questions about the jilted fiancé, the forgery, the family debt. They called it the married on paper scandal. Freddy's lawyers had made sure that phrase trended. Inside the courtroom, the air was colder than I expected. Vanessa sat behind me each day, her laptop open, fingers steady. She'd told me on the first morning, they'll try to rewrite your story. Just keep telling the truth louder. The prosecution opened with evidence so thick it could drown a man. Bank records, emails, falsified documents, recordings from Freddy's own voice notes. And still, he looked unshakable. Perfect suit, perfect smirk. The same predator who'd once stood outside my door, pretending to negotiate mercy. When it was my turn to testify, the prosecutor guided me gently. Miss Marlowe, did the defendant ever threaten you? Yes. How? He said my parents' freedom depended on my obedience. He called it love. It was leverage. And the marriage contract? Forged. He used scans of my old paperwork, even copied my handwriting loop. The room listened. Some faces sympathetic, others skeptical. I told them about the texts, the photos, the stalking, about the moment I realized every rejection in my life was manufactured to corner me, about the night I fought back. Then came cross-examination. Freddy's lawyer rose like a shark scenting blood. Miss Marlowe, he said smoothly, you admit you met with my client socially, correct? He's family friends with my parents. Right. And you exchanged messages with him? Because he wouldn't stop sending them. He smiled like we were sharing a secret. You responded. To tell him to stop. Of course, but you did respond. And isn't it true you accepted gifts from him? I blinked. He sent them unasked. I returned most. So some you didn't? The jury leaned forward, my throat closed. He pressed. It's also true you benefited financially from his generosity. Rent, tuition, even car payments. Your parents' debts, conveniently reduced after he entered their lives. My chest burned. He used that money to control them. Control, the lawyer echoed, savoring the word. Or provide. The prosecutor's objection cracked through the air. Sustained. But the poison had already landed. By the end of that day, I felt flayed raw. Reporters printed every sentence out of context. Marlowe admits to accepting gifts from Morrison. Headlines were daggers dressed as ink. Vanessa made me tea that night. He's losing, she said firmly. They're scrambling. They want you emotional, so you'll slip. Then they should be careful what they wish for, I said, and I meant it. The following week, Freddy himself took the stand. Hearing his voice again made the room tilt. He talked about me like I was a fever dream, an unstable girl who'd imagined affection where there was only pity. He claimed he'd helped my family out of compassion, claimed I'd forged everything to cover gambling debts my father owed. Every lie landed like a blade. The prosecutor waited until the very end to drop the bomb. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "are these your voice recordings?" He hesitated. "I don't recall." She hit play. "Your parents' bail is $500,000 each. I can fix everything. You just have to stop fighting." The jury went still. For once, Freddy looked smaller, human. The prosecutor let the silence hang before adding, "Funny thing about arrogance, Mr. Morrison, it tends to keep receipts." When the trial recessed, the headlines flipped. Audio recording sink Morrison defense. Victim vindicated. But the victory felt heavy, not sweet. Mom was still facing sentencing. Dad refused to write. My own name had become public property. Strangers online debating whether I was a survivor or a manipulator. David and I moved through those days like soldiers after the battle, but before the peace. He drove me to court every morning, stood outside every night, hands in his pockets, pretending to be calm. When the verdict finally came, guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted, people clapped, cameras flashed. I didn't move, I couldn't. Freddy just turned his head toward me, slow and deliberate. "You think this ends with me?" he said quietly, almost gently. "It never ends." The bailiff pulled him away, but his words stuck. That night, Davin took me home, held me until dawn, and said, "He's behind bars. It's over." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as I lay awake listening to the city outside, all I could hear was Freddy's voice echoing through memory. It never ends. And I wondered, for the first time, if survival had its own kind of sentence. 3 days after the verdict, the courthouse was already empty of cameras, but the noise hadn't stopped. Reporters moved on to other scandals. Social media still argued over my motives. Half the internet called me brave, the other half called me a liar who'd destroyed a successful man. It was strange, winning and still feeling like the world had decided you lost something anyway. Freddy was gone, but he left behind a wake that kept dragging me under. Mom was out on bail, waiting for sentencing. Dad hadn't spoken to me since the day the police took him away in handcuffs. Our house, my childhood home, was officially seized for restitution. Davin kept saying, "You don't owe anyone an apology." But guilt doesn't listen to logic. It's a language that translates everything into regret. When Mom requested a visit, I said no the first 3 times. On the 4th, Vanessa convinced me. "Closure isn't about her deserving it," she said. "It's about you needing to hear it." The halfway house was beige, the kind of color designed to erase people. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Hair gray, shoulders sunken, hands trembling around a styrofoam cup. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I sat across from her without touching the coffee she'd poured for me. "Why'd you do it?" Her lips pressed together like she'd rehearsed the question for months. "Because I was afraid. We were drowning, Jessa. Your father had mortgaged everything. Freddy was the only one who offered help." "You mean he offered a price?" She nodded, tears building. "We told ourselves it was temporary, that you'd be taken care of, that it was love, not what it was." She inhaled sharply. "And when we realized what he really wanted, it was too late. He owned everything, including us." "You could have stopped it." "I should have," she said. No hesitation, no excuses. "You were our daughter, and we treated you like currency. That's a sin I'll never forgive myself for." She slid an envelope across the table. "There's $3,000 in here. It's all I have left. It's not penance, but I need you to take it." "I don't want your money," I said quietly. "Then take the photos inside," she whispered. "They're from before all this, before debt, before Freddy. So you remember we weren't always monsters." I didn't open the envelope until after she was gone. Inside were pictures of birthdays, summers, a mother smiling like the world was still kind. I tucked them into my bag without looking too long. On the way out, Vanessa was waiting in the car. "How was it?" she asked. "She told the truth," I said, "and I still don't know how to feel about it." "That's okay," Vanessa said. "Truth is just a tool. What you build with it, that's what matters." The months that followed blurred. The sentencing came in spring. Mom got 6 years, Dad 7. The court called it cooperation leniency. I called it a halfway redemption. Freddy's empire collapsed in public. Every fake charity, every shell company, every donation exposed. The restitution fund went to victims he'd defrauded. My parents' names were removed from some of the criminal accounts, but not all. Some stains never wash out completely. David and I sold what was left of the house and used the proceeds to relocate west. Fresh start, he said. No one in Portland cares who your parents are. He was right. The first morning in our new apartment, I woke to rain tapping the windows instead of headlines. I got a job at a small design firm. No cameras, no whispers. Just deadlines and coffee stains and coworkers who didn't know the story of my life. For a while, that was enough. Then, one evening, Detective Novak called. He's filing an appeal, he said. Freddy. Claims procedural misconduct, fake evidence, prosecutorial bias. It won't work, but you should know. For a moment, the air felt thin. Is he doing this from prison? Yes, and he's ill. Heart issues. He's not getting out. Novak hesitated. Sometimes men like him can't stand losing control, even from behind bars. The appeal isn't about freedom, it's about getting under your skin. It's working, I admitted. He chuckled sadly. Then you're still human. That night, Davin found me sitting in the dark, scrolling through articles I'd promised never to read again. He took the phone from my hand and set it aside. He doesn't live here anymore, he said gently. You do. He was right again. We married quietly the following fall. No photographers, no headlines, just rain, wildflowers, and a handful of people who'd seen both the fire and the rebuilding. Vanessa officiated. Her voice didn't tremble once. After the ceremony, I walked outside barefoot, the grass wet under my feet, and thought about all the people I used to be. The girl who'd begged to be believed, the woman who'd learned to fight, the survivor still learning to breathe. Somewhere in between those versions of me was the truth. I hadn't just survived Freddy. I'd dismantled him. Still, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. But tired is honest. Tired means you've carried something heavy and didn't drop it. That night, after everyone left, I sat by the window and opened Mom's envelope again. I looked at one photo, a 6-year-old me on her lap, both of us laughing, and whispered to the reflection, "We're done now. You can rest." Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and endless, washing everything clean except the memories that built me. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch at my own reflection. A year after the verdict, life had the quiet hum of normalcy again, though normal had been rewritten. I woke to the smell of coffee instead of panic. Davin hummed while shaving. The morning news mentioned the economy, not my name. Portland suited us. The city was gray and forgiving, the kind of place where everyone minded their own ghosts. I found steady work designing logos for small businesses, bookstores, cafes, nonprofits that cared about something other than themselves. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe, and safety had become a luxury I didn't take lightly. The first few months, I still caught myself checking every shadow twice, scanning license plates in parking lots, expecting Freddy's shape around every corner. Trauma, it turns out, doesn't vanish. It just learns to whisper instead of scream. David never mentioned the case unless I did. He understood that healing wasn't a straight line. Some nights, I'd wake gasping, tangled in sheets that felt too much like chains. He never asked what I saw. He just held me until the shaking stopped. 6 months after the move, Vanessa came to visit. She looked different, lighter, almost peaceful. I started a nonprofit, she told me over lunch, stirring her tea with the kind of deliberate calm that comes after chaos. Legal aid for survivors of coercive control and financial abuse. I called it Phoenix House. That's perfect, I said. She smiled. You inspired it. You and every woman who's been told her cage was a safety net. By fall, I started volunteering there on weekends, helping with design work, intake forms, whatever needed doing. Sitting across from women whose eyes looked like mine once did made me realize something I hadn't said out loud. The story wasn't about Freddy anymore. It was about what came after. One morning, as I sorted case files, Vanessa glanced up. You ever think about going public with your story again? On your own terms this time? I hesitated. The last time nearly destroyed me. This time, she said softly, you'd own the narrative. That night, I thought about it. how Freddy had used my silence as a weapon, how my parents had traded truth for comfort. I wasn't that person anymore. So I wrote, not an exposé, not a revenge piece, just a letter. Simple, raw, honest. To anyone who's ever been told to keep quiet for the sake of family, reputation, or fear, silence only protects the people who hurt you. Speak anyway. I sent it to a small women's advocacy blog, expecting nothing. Within a week, it spread, shared by survivor networks, reprinted by advocacy pages, quoted in interviews. But this time, my name wasn't dragged through the mud. It was whispered with respect. Then, one gray morning, the phone rang. Detective Novak. He didn't waste time with greetings. Morrison's dead. Heart attack in his cell. For a long moment, all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator. Jessa? I'm here, I said. My voice didn't shake. I thought you'd want to know. Thank you. I hung up. I expected relief. Instead, I felt nothing. Not victory, not peace, just the quiet weight of finality. When I told Davin, he looked at me for a long time before speaking. He can't hurt you anymore. He stopped hurting me the day I stopped believing he could, I said. That night, rain returned, steady, rhythmic, Portland rain. I stood on the balcony barefoot, eyes closed, letting the cold drops soak my hair and skin. For years, rain had meant danger. Now it meant something else. Cleansing, renewal, rebirth. Inside, the apartment was warm, lit softly. Davin was asleep on the couch, one arm thrown over the blanket. I looked at him, the man who stayed through every storm, and realized how much of my life I'd spent waiting for permission to breathe. I didn't need permission anymore. I sat at my desk, opened my old journal, the one that started with Freddy's forged contract, and tore out the page with my false signature. I replaced it with a clean sheet and wrote in bold ink, "This is my life, my terms, my truth." Then I closed it. For the first time, the story was mine to keep. 2 years passed, long enough for scars to fade into faint silver lines, long enough for my name to stop being a headline and start being a whisper of someone who survived. By then, Davin and I had built a life that looked simple from the outside, an apartment filled with plants that refused to die, weekend hikes, dinners with friends who didn't know the story behind my new last name. But underneath it, everything I did carried the quiet purpose of someone who'd learned what freedom really costs. The nonprofit Vanessa founded, Phoenix House, had grown faster than any of us imagined. There were now 6 offices across 3 states, helping survivors of financial manipulation, stalking, and digital abuse. I ran the outreach and design arm, writing, creating materials, teaching workshops on reclaiming identity after coercion. Every month, I met women whose stories echoed mine in different accents and different details. One of them, a shy college student, once asked, "Do you ever stop feeling like you're still in the story?" I told her the truth. "No, you just start writing new chapters louder than the old ones." That became our motto at Phoenix House. Sometimes I wondered what my mother would think if she saw what her daughter had done with the same word she once feared most, survivor. She was still in prison, serving out her sentence quietly. She wrote once a year, short letters that never asked forgiveness, just shared pieces of her new life, gardening in the yard, tutoring other inmates. I hadn't written back yet, but I saved every letter. There was time for forgiveness, just not yet. And Freddy? His death barely made the papers. A footnote. Disgraced consultant dies in federal custody. No one said his name the way they used to, with reverence or fear. He'd been erased by his own deeds. Still, on certain nights, when the wind pushed rain against the windows, I'd think of him. Not as the monster who'd tried to own me, but as proof that darkness doesn't win unless you let it. One afternoon, Vanessa found me in the office sketching a poster for an upcoming event. "You know, you could tell your story in person," she said. "You've earned the right to speak it out loud." I smiled. "I already did." She tilted her head. I showed her the design I'd been working on, a simple black background with white lettering. Bold, unflinching. The truth isn't what they let you say. It's what you choose to keep saying, even after they try to bury it. J.M. Vanessa stared at it for a long time. "That's perfect," she said quietly. "That's everything." That spring, Davin and I married again. Properly this time. Not in hiding, not out of fear, but in the open air under Oregon pines. Just a few friends, no photographers, no press. Vanessa officiated again. but this time her voice cracked when she said the vows. After everyone left, I stayed behind in the clearing, barefoot in the cool grass, listening to the creek. The wind smelled like cedar. I closed my eyes and let myself remember the girl I'd been at 23, the one who'd sat in that diner with shaking hands and coffee gone cold. She'd thought she was running away from everything, but really, she'd been running toward herself. Later that night, at home, I opened the box where I kept the last fragments of the old life, the forged contract, the letters from Mom, a printed copy of my article from the advocacy blog. I added one more thing, a small brass key engraved with Phoenix '01. It was from our first office. I closed the lid and wrote on top with a permanent marker, "The cost of freedom, paid in full." Outside, the rain started again, steady and soft. Davin called from the kitchen, asking if I wanted tea. I looked once more at the box, then at the life we'd built beyond it. Quiet, fragile, real. "Yes," I said, smiling, "make it strong." Because I was. Because we were. Because for the first time since everything burned, the fire finally felt like warmth.